10 flight secrets pilots are ordered to hide from every passenger. The truth is, pilots are not usually ordered to hide dramatic secrets from passengers in the way movies make it seem. But there are many things passengers are rarely told clearly during a flight. Airlines prefer calm cabins, smooth communication, and simple announcements. So many details are either softened, shortened, or left unsaid, unless they become necessary. That does not mean pilots are lying. It means passengers usually get only the information that helps the flight continue without panic or confusion. Behind every takeoff, delay, turbulence patch, and landing, there are many realities most travelers never hear explained in full. Some of these are about safety. Some are about passenger comfort. Some are about airline procedures that feel very different inside the cockpit than they do in the cabin. Once you understand these hidden truths, flying starts to make a lot more sense. Here are 10 flight secrets passengers are rarely told directly, even though they shape almost every trip from takeoff to landing. 1. Turbulence feels scary, but pilots usually are not scared by it. One of the biggest flight secrets is that turbulence sounds far more dangerous to passengers than it usually feels to pilots. In the cabin, a few sudden drops or shakes can make people think something is seriously wrong. In the cockpit, turbulence is usually treated as a routine operating condition, not an emergency. Pilots are trained for it, aircraft are built to handle it, and most turbulence is more uncomfortable than dangerous. The real risk is often not the plane itself, but passengers or crew getting injured if they are not seated or buckled in. That is one reason the seatbelt sign matters so much. Pilots also do not always describe turbulence in dramatic detail, because clear, calm communication helps prevent panic. If passengers heard every technical concern or route adjustment, many would assume the worst. The hidden truth is that pilots often remain much calmer than the cabin during rough air. What feels like a crisis to passengers is often just another part of managing the flight safely and normally. 2. A delay in the air often started as a problem on the ground. Passengers often think delays are caused only by weather or late takeoff. But one hidden truth is that many flight problems begin long before the plane leaves the gate. Crew rotations, maintenance checks, baggage loading delays, fuel coordination, air traffic congestion, paperwork, and aircraft arrival timing can all create a delay before passengers even understand what is happening. Pilots may know the schedule is under pressure before the first announcement is made, but announcements are often kept simple because operations are still changing. A passenger may hear, "We're just waiting on paperwork," but the full reality may involve several linked systems running late at once. That is not necessarily secrecy in a dishonest sense. It is often a way of avoiding long explanations that would only confuse or frustrate people more. The important hidden truth is that flight timing is fragile. Small disruptions on the ground can quietly grow into major delays later, and by the time passengers notice, the real cause may have started much earlier than they think. 3. Smooth landings are not always the safest landings. Many passengers judge a pilot by how soft the landing feels, but that is one of the most misunderstood parts of flying. A perfectly smooth landing may feel impressive, but in some conditions, a firmer landing is actually the safer and more controlled choice. Strong wind, rain, runway contamination, gusts, and aircraft weight can all change how a landing should be performed. Pilots are not trying to make every landing feel elegant. They are trying to make it safe, stable, and appropriate for the conditions. The reason passengers are not usually told this in detail is simple. Most people naturally assume a hard landing means something went wrong. In reality, it can mean the pilot did exactly what was needed. The secret is that the best landing is not always the one that feels nicest to the body. It is the one that puts the aircraft firmly and safely on the runway under the real conditions of that moment. Pilots know that. Passengers usually do not. 4. The weather you see is not always the weather pilots are dealing with. From a passenger seat, the sky can look calm and harmless, especially above the clouds. But pilots are working with a much bigger weather picture than what passengers can see through the window. They are tracking wind shear, turbulence reports, thunderstorms, icing conditions, crosswinds, visibility changes, and route adjustments far ahead of the aircraft. This is one reason flights sometimes change course, climb, descend, or delay landing, even when the weather outside your window does not look that bad. Pilots do not always explain the full weather situation because cockpit weather decisions are technical and fast-moving, and too much detail can easily sound alarming. The hidden truth is that weather management is one of the constant background jobs of flying. Even on an ordinary trip, the cockpit may be quietly making decisions around weather issues passengers never notice. So when a pilot says conditions ahead are a little rough or not ideal, that short phrase may be covering a much more detailed and carefully managed situation. 5. Not every strange sound means something is wrong. A flight is full of noises passengers do not understand. You hear thumps, engine changes, clicks, whining sounds, hydraulic movement, gear extension noise, flap deployment, and all kinds of cabin and airframe sounds that can feel suspicious if you are nervous. One hidden truth of flying is that many of these sounds are completely normal parts of aircraft operation. Pilots and crew rarely explain each one because that would be impossible and unnecessary on every flight. If they announced every mechanical sound that passengers might notice, many people would become more anxious, not less. Aircraft are complex machines, and normal operation involves constant changes in configuration and system behavior. The secret is not that something is being hidden in a sinister way. It is that what sounds alarming to a first-time flyer often sounds ordinary to trained crew. This is why experienced travelers and flight crews often stay calm during noises that make nervous passengers freeze. The unfamiliar does not automatically mean unsafe. In aviation, many odd sounds are simply proof that systems are working as intended. 6. Pilots often know more than they can announce immediately. Passengers sometimes assume that if pilots know something important, they will say it right away. But in reality, cockpit communication is often more cautious than that. Pilots may be aware of a possible issue, delay, reroute, or operational concern before passengers hear anything. The reason is not always secrecy for its own sake. Often pilots are still confirming facts, coordinating with air traffic control, dispatch, cabin crew, or ground operations before making an announcement. In that stage, giving incomplete information can create confusion or panic. So passengers may sit in silence while the cockpit already understands that something is changing. This happens with weather delays, gate holds, maintenance checks, missed slots, and route adjustments more often than people realize. The hidden truth is that pilots do not just communicate when they know something. They communicate when they know enough to say it clearly and usefully. That gap between cockpit awareness and cabin announcement is one reason passengers often feel left in the dark, even when the crew is actively managing the problem the whole time. 7. The seatbelt sign is not just a suggestion. Many passengers treat the seatbelt sign like advice they can ignore if the cabin feels calm, but from the cockpit side, that light is often far more serious than passengers realize. Pilots may turn it on not only for current turbulence, but for expected turbulence, changing conditions, traffic-related maneuvering, or descent phases where sudden motion becomes more likely. Passengers do not always hear the full reason, because the explanation might be too technical or simply unnecessary in the moment. But one hidden truth is that pilots know passengers can get hurt very quickly during unexpected movement, even in what seems like mild turbulence. A person walking to the lavatory at the wrong moment can be thrown hard enough to suffer real injury. That is why crews sometimes sound firm about sitting down, even when the flight feels fine. The secret is that the cockpit is not reacting only to what the cabin feels. It is reacting to what the crew expects may happen next. The seatbelt sign matters most before the danger becomes obvious. 8. Fuel decisions are more strategic than passengers realize. Passengers sometimes imagine fuel as a simple calculation, enough to get from one airport to another. But pilots and airlines plan fuel with far more complexity than that. Fuel decisions include route length, weather, holding patterns, alternate airports, air traffic delays, winds, contingencies, and safety reserves. Pilots do not usually explain this unless there is a significant delay or diversion, because most passengers do not need the technical detail. But one hidden truth is that fuel affects many flight decisions you never see. A reroute around weather, a longer time in the air, or a missed approach can all connect back to fuel planning. That does not mean flights are running on the edge. Aviation rules are built around safety margins. But it does mean fuel is a more active factor in operations than passengers often assume. When flights divert or land somewhere unexpected, passengers may think the decision came out of nowhere. In reality, fuel planning and fuel limits are often part of the quiet logic behind those choices. 9. Go-arounds are safe, even if they feel alarming. One of the most unsettling things for passengers is when the plane seems ready to land and then suddenly powers up and climbs again. Many people assume this means something went badly wrong. In reality, a go-around is a normal and trained maneuver. Pilots do it when landing conditions are not right, whether because of unstable approach, runway occupancy, weather, spacing, wind, or visibility. The hidden truth is that a go-around is often proof that the system is working exactly as it should. Instead of forcing a landing that does not feel right, the crew chooses another approach. Pilots do not always give a full explanation immediately, because they are busy flying the aircraft, coordinating, and setting up again. To passengers, that silence can make the event feel more mysterious and frightening. But in aviation terms, going around is not a failure, it is a safety decision. The real secret is that the most professional pilots are not the ones who land no matter what. They are the ones willing to stop the landing when conditions are not good enough. 10. Pilots care more about routine than drama. Passengers often imagine flying as a job full of big moments and heroic decisions, but one hidden truth is that pilots want the opposite of drama. They want routine, predictability, clear procedures, and stable operations. The safest flights are usually the most boring ones from the cockpit perspective. That is why so many things passengers wish were more exciting are actually things pilots try hard to avoid. Sudden changes, rushed turnarounds, unstable approaches, confusing communication, and emotional reactions all make flying worse, not better. Pilots do not usually tell passengers this so directly, but the entire system of modern aviation is built around reducing surprises. Checklists, standard calls, procedures, and layered safety systems exist to make flying structured rather than dramatic. The secret passengers rarely think about is that confidence in aviation does not come from bold improvisation. It comes from discipline and repetition. The reason pilots often sound calm, short, and matter-of-fact is because that mindset is part of what makes flying safe. In the cockpit, boring is usually a very good sign. The biggest truth behind these flight secrets is that most of them are not dark conspiracies. They are simply parts of flying that passengers are not usually told in full, because too much technical detail can confuse, alarm, or overwhelm people during travel. Pilots are not hiding everything from passengers out of malice. More often, they are filtering information so the cabin stays calm while the crew focuses on safety and procedure. Once you understand that, flying feels less mysterious. Turbulence feels less terrifying, delays make more sense, and even unusual sounds or repeated approaches feel less like hidden danger and more like normal aviation reality. The more you know about what is happening behind the scenes, the easier it becomes to travel with confidence. What passengers often interpret as secrecy is usually just professional control, calm communication, and careful decision-making in an environment where staying steady matters more than saying everything.